Hello, everyone. Welcome to I Made a Podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. This is the kickoff for season number 2 of I Made a Podcast, and I'm so glad you're here. We're going to have a really good conversation today, and I'm going to start the season off strong with something that can help you as a content creator, as a podcaster, in whatever you're doing. And I'm sure if you're not even a content creator, you can learn a lot of things about what we're going to talk about today. The topic for today's episode is how to continue to create content without burning out. So this is going to be really beneficial for all my content creators out there, all my podcasters, people who do YouTube talking head videos like this. And if you create content for social media in any way, shape, or form, this episode is going to be a benefit for you. So make sure that you listen, take notes, and I know that this is going to be helpful. So I Made a Podcast is about podcasting. This is season number 2. I've talked to so many podcasters in the past seasons, and I have so much great episodes coming up in this season that you're going to want to subscribe, share it with one of your friends. And if you know anyone who is on the fence about starting a podcast, share this podcast with them, share this video with them so that they can learn a little bit more about podcasting, and it will help them shorten the learning curve so that they can know what to do, how to do it, and how to maybe even do some things without using a lot of money or to buy tools or equipment, because really you can make a podcast if you just have a cell phone and an internet connection. That's really all you need. But I went over all these things in my past episodes, and I talked to a lot of amazing podcasters. So if you are on the fence about starting a podcast, or if you know someone who is, share this with them so that they can listen and learn. Or if you are a podcaster and you want to get better at it, you can listen to I Made a Podcast, listen to any of the episodes that I've done, and you can take what you can learn and apply it to what you do as a podcaster. So today for this episode, I'm talking about how to continue to create content without burning out. And I know this is a real problem for a lot of people because it's not easy to create content consistently for social media, for your podcast, for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever social media app that you're using. It's not easy to be consistent and pump out a lot of content over and over and over. But there are things that you can do in order to make the burden lighter for you so that you can actually enjoy it and continue to put out content that benefits the people who follow you. And that's what it's about. You want to create impact, and you want to be a light, and you want to help someone out there. And that's why you create content for either your business or your personal brand. Whatever it is, you want to help somebody. You want to share your opinion, share your voice, share something that's inside of your heart with other people. And that's why we create content. And I recently was on Instagram, and one of my Instagram friends posted a reel, and I watched it, and I sent her a message. I was like, wow, this is a great reel. I watched it and I listened to it, and it was awesome. So I had to send her a message, and she replied back to me, and she said, thanks. I don't know how you content creators do this. It was exhausting. And it's true. Creating content can be exhausting. So just for some context, before I go into what you can do as a content creator to avoid burnout, let me share with you what I do on a regular basis. And you might do more, but this is what's on my plate. So first of all, I have a family. I have a wife and I have a son. And I have brothers and sisters who have nieces and nephews, and I love to get together and spend time with all the littles and have fun and play, which reminds me, we probably will be getting together tomorrow from the date that I'm recording this, and I'm looking forward to it so much because it's so great when you have family, little kids, and you can spend quality time with them. That's something that I love. I think that's my love language, quality time. But anyways, so I have family, and I love to spend time with my family and be impactful in my relationships. That's one thing. Now, I also have a full-time job. Yes, I do. I work full 5 days a week, 40 hours or whatever it is, and I work full-time. That's another thing that takes up a lot of time out of my day. Now, I also serve in my church. I am a worshiper, so I sing So if anyone out there who is a musician or who sings, you know that actually that by itself takes up a lot of time because you got to listen to the music, you got to practice on your own, and you got to make time for rehearsals and everything like that. So that also takes up a lot of time out of my schedule. In addition to that, I also play the guitar on my own, kind of like as a hobby, and I have other hobbies like working on my project car. But there's a lot of things that I do on a regular basis. I also like to go out and get exercise. So I like to run in the summertime when it's warm out, and I like to skate in the wintertime. So these are all things that take up my time. And as a podcast producer, I also have clients that I support and I help produce their content for them. So as of the time that I'm recording this episode, I have 4 active clients that I'm working with in different parts of the world, and I help produce their content. So I listen to the content, I edit, and I help them to produce it, publish it, and put it out there to the world. And also, where we are right now is in my studio. So I have a studio where people can come and record their podcasts, and they come here and I help them set it up, and they can come and record their content, and then I edit it and send it back to them. That's something that I also do as part of my podcast production business. So these are all the things that I have on my plate. Oh, I also forgot. I have 2 podcasts. So this podcast called I Made a Podcast, and also my other podcast, the OG podcast, the one that started it all, which is the Faith Fight podcast. Since 2018, I've been doing that podcast. More than 300 episodes in the bank so far with the Faith Fight podcast. So these are all the things that are on my plate on a regular basis. So you might be saying, okay, Chris, you provided good context because you do a lot. How are you able to have a family, manage all of these podcasts, have a full-time job, have time to have recreation and have hobbies? How are you able to do it? Let me explain to you how I'm able to do it. And I hope that you can take what you can out of this video, out of this episode, and apply it into your life. So I'm going to break down everything into 3 different areas. Number 1 is to be organized and set specific boundaries for your time. So when it comes to being organized, you should know everything that's on your plate to do. I have a to-do list for myself, and some people think that's old-fashioned, but it works for me, so I continue to do it. And I also use a calendar app on my phone to kind of schedule what I need to do, and this helps me to stay organized. So I know the big chunks of time that I have. So I know I have my full-time job that I need to work. I know that I also may need to spend time to record a podcast. I know that I need to maybe spend time to go out and get some exercise to keep my body strong and healthy. These are things that I kind of make sure that I write down somewhere, maybe not too specific, but maybe in general, just to make sure that I can do those things during my day. Now, obviously, my full-time job, I don't need to write down a to-do list, to make sure I do my daytime job, because that's something that is consistent every single week, right? So I don't need to write that down, but other things that can fit in the gaps around that is exactly where you need to put some structure and organization too, so that you can be productive with the time that you have. Now, one of the things that is beneficial for me is to wake up early. I wake up sometimes around 6:30, maybe even 5 o'clock in the morning, and that gives me some good quality time to do what other things that I need to do. Whether it is I need to do some editing for myself or one of my clients, I could wake up early when my family is still asleep, and I can knock out some good quality work when I'm fresh and really creative right in the morning. Or I can take that time in the morning to write out a script or an outline for an episode that I'm going to do for my own podcast. So one of the things that I do is wake up early and make sure that my time is organized and scheduled. Now, once your time is organized and scheduled, you'll be able to look at it and see where you have gaps in your day that you can fit in other things. And again, this falls into being organized. So here's an example. I work from home, but I usually have a lunchtime hour that I can use to do whatever I want. Most people use that time to eat their lunch, and I do too. But what I do is actually I eat my lunch for maybe half of that time, but because I have planned my podcast episode and written out a script or an outline for what I'm going to talk about, I can go in and record a podcast episode maybe in 30 minutes in my lunch break in the middle of the day and bang it out, in no time. And then by the end of my lunch hour, I would have had time to eat my lunch, and I would have had time to record a podcast episode because I prepared for it ahead of time. Now, this only comes if you can stay organized. So create to-do lists, create a calendar with all the things that you need to do, and see the gaps that you have in your schedule so that you can see where you can fit in other things that you need to do. Now, one of the key things that makes all of this work together is making sure that you have very good boundaries, right? So when you're doing something, you're doing it from this time to this time. So like I mentioned, if I'm recording my podcast episode between the time of 12:30 to 1 o'clock in my lunch break, I'm spending that time recording my podcast. But then when 1 o'clock hits and I need to get back to work, I know I need to shut down my camera, my computer, and my microphone, put it all away, and then go back to my day job, right? I set boundaries, be very strategic. And at the same time, when my day job is over and I need to spend time with my family, I shut off my day job computer and I go spend time with my family, or I go out and get some exercise. But setting clear boundaries is something that will help you to create content. Be organized, set clear boundaries. It will help you to create content more efficiently. Okay, so that is number one. That is the first way to avoid burnout and continue to create content. Be organized with your time and set clear boundaries with what you do in any single day. And number two is to organize your efforts for efficiency and use technology as a tool for yourself. So when I say organize for efficiency, what I mean is if you are doing something and you can do the same thing once and repeat it multiple times, then do that and make it easier for yourself so you don't have to do the same thing over and over and over again. Here's an example. In the realm of podcasting, my intro and outro for my podcast and certain other parts of my podcast stay the same pretty much for every single episode. So when I set 30 minutes out of the day to record my podcast episode, I'm not going to record the same intro again that I do every single episode. I already have it recorded once and I just reuse it as much time as I need to, as well as the outro. So that cuts down the amount of time that I need to record the intro because I already did it. I don't need to change it again. Unless there's something specific that I need to record for that intro or outro, I don't need to record the intro and outro again because I do it once, save it, and then when I'm doing my editing, I will just slide the new episode that I just recorded in between the intro and the outro that I've already pre-recorded, and I just edit it together so it all sounds nice. All right, so this is just one tip. And again, we can find things that we can use as templates. So for my clients that I produce their podcast for them, for each one of them, I have a template, a session on my computer. So when they send me a new audio file for a podcast episode, I just take that podcast episode and I upload it into that template that I have for them. And I just fit it in and adjust the margins so that things transition nicely, do my work to do whatever editing or producing that I need to do of that episode. And then I'm finished, right? So I don't repeat things over and over and over again. I create templates. The things that can be repeated, I repeat them. But most of the times I'm not doing the same thing over and over and over again when I find out that I can be efficient by using a template or something so that I don't need to do something repeatedly when it's something that doesn't change every single episode. So that's another tip for all podcasters out there or content creators. If there's a template that you can create to keep and save so that when you are creating content, you can use it over and over and over again, this is something that will be absolutely beneficial to you. And use technology as a tool. So for example, I'm here recording this podcast. I'm actually recording an audio podcast. I'm also recording a video podcast. And I can use this in so many different ways. So number one, the audio will go onto all of the podcasts and apps out there, the Apple, the Spotify, etc. The video that I'm recording at the same time will be used to put on YouTube. And that video I'm actually also going to use as social reels that I'm going to use for TikTok and for Instagram and Facebook and YouTube shorts, all of those things. So I'm using the technology. I'm sitting down doing this one time and I'm using that same recording multiple areas. Use technology as a tool. Now there is one tool that I found called, there's a couple tools. There's one called Opus Clip and video.ai, or I think it's called something else now. But anyways, you could Google it, or I'll put links for it so that you can find it. But with these tools, you can easily take your video and upload it into these tools, and it will create short form content for you with the captions and your brand color and everything for you. And you don't need to go in manually creating each one of these different short reels, because that's time consuming. So use technology as a tool to help you create content. So because I have multiple podcasts of my own, and I have clients that I actually also manage their podcasts as well, there's something that I do throughout my day that actually helps me to kind of proof listen to all of the content that I produce, whether myself or my clients. I found out that our brains can do multiple things at a time, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. Let me explain. So first of all, or let me explain how I use my brain. So when I am working my day job, or when I'm out for a run, or when I'm cooking dinner or cleaning up the kitchen or whatever, I like to listen to my podcast that I produce, where I can do something, right? Whether it is cooking dinner or doing some work for my day job, I can listen to my podcast that I just finished editing for myself or my client, and actually take notes of what I hear if I need to go back into that episode and make any changes. So it's not that I am editing or working on that podcast, I'm just proof listening to it and making notes, so that when I go back, when my work is done, or when I'm finished cleaning up the kitchen, or whatever the case is, I can go back into that episode to that very specific time that I made notes about and edit that specific thing that I heard when I was proof listening. And this is, people want to say multitasking, but I don't believe in multitasking. This is just me using the active and the passive parts of my brain at the same time. And also so that I can be efficient with my time and get as much done as possible. And this is what I do with all of my podcasts for myself and my clients. I will be working my day job, and if there's something that I'm doing at my day job that doesn't require a lot of brain cells, then I will be able to listen to a podcast that I've produced for someone else, and just on the side have my little notepad making notes while I'm working out my day job, right? So that's how I do it. So you could do this as well with your podcast or with your content that you create, if it works for you, if it works with your day job and works with the content that you're creating. Try to use your active and the passive parts of your brain to do two things at the same time. It's not multitasking, it's called being efficient. Maybe I'll say that. Yeah, be efficient with your brain. There you go. Now, the final thing that I'm going to share in this episode of what you can do as a content creator to avoid burnout and continue to produce content, and it might sound a little counterintuitive, but hear me out, is take breaks. Okay. Now, when you take a break, now I do this all the time. This is season number 2 of I Made a Podcast, and I recently just took a break from season number 1, which ended in August, and now we are in April. So I took a break. What that actually does, it gives you time to step away, to think, to reflect, and then to come up with more creative ideas about what you're creating. It might stimulate you to do something different. And a really good example is what I am in right now. So as I mentioned, in August when I finished I Made a Podcast season number 1, I took a break and I was doing some strategic thinking about things that I wanted to do for the upcoming year. And one of the things that I always had on my mind was to have my own podcast studio. And I started to think about it. I was like, can I do it? And I put some strategic thought to it about how I can do it, who I need to talk to, what I need to get. And within the time from last season to now, I was able to not only find this location, but also build out this studio. So now I'm actually able to do more. My content, my camera that I'm using is a little bit better than what I had last year. The set that I'm in right now is a little bit better than my home office, which is what I was using last year. So by stepping away and taking a break, I was able to think creatively about things that I want to do to enhance what I'm already passionate about. And I stepped away from I Made a Podcast for a season, only to come back stronger and better. So by taking a break, you can step away and create more things, be more strategic about your plan and your vision and your focus for the next upcoming season of your content creation, right? So take that away as a takeaway for yourself. So take a break, spend some time, get out of the regular routine and think about your content creating and be strategic about your plans for the future. And that only happens when you take a break. And you don't need to keep going. Now, there are no rules to content creation, right? You may feel the desire or the need to continue to push and pump out content and to do this and to do that, but there are no rules to content creation. Now, you can take a break and step back from creating a reel every single day and uploading it to every single social media platform. Or you can be specific and strategic about the types of reels and the types of content that you release to each one of your social media platforms. And when you create those reels and when you share them, right, think about these things. There are no rules to social media. So you can create content, and whatever schedule that you come up with, just make sure that it serves you better than everyone else, that it serves your schedule and that you can commit to it. And your followers, your subscribers, what I've noticed is that they will adjust according to the expectation that you set for them. So if you release one episode or one reel or one piece of content every single week, then they will expect that from you. And they won't. And if you do give them 2 pieces of content in a week, then they'll see that as a bonus. But if you set the bar high and release one episode every single day for a week, that's the expectation your audience is going to expect from you. So you set the expectation according to your ability. If you can only release one reel or one podcast or one video every single week or maybe every single month, do your best at it and make it your best content and then share it out there. Your audience who loves your content will appreciate it, and they'll still follow, they'll still subscribe, and they'll still look out and be anxious for all of the good things that you're going to share for your content. There are no rules to social media. So create the expectation that you have for your content and the expectation that your audience will expect of you for your content, okay? You don't have to create every single day or every single week or whatever the schedule is. You set that content to avoid burnout. And finally, taking a break gives you an opportunity to stimulate new creative ideas. Now, if you are in your regular day-to-day routine, and I know sometimes with everything that I mentioned about creating a schedule and finding the gaps and doing things over and over and over again, whatever your routine or your schedule is, it may become very routine and robotic in a sense. But when you take a break and step back, it's a good idea to break out of your regular routine and do something different. Take a break. Go to a different location. If you usually go to the same place for coffee in the morning, take a drive further out and go to a different place when you're taking your breaks. It's that change of environment that will open you up to new experiences, new people, new way of thinking, new way of doing things. Go take a vacation, because when you take a trip to a different location, you experience a different way of life. And that different way of life can stimulate new ways of thinking. So go take a vacation and see how people do things in a different part of the world. And when you come back, you'll be able to apply what you learned in that different place in your content creation and have fresh new ideas. So it's not a bad idea. It's not wrong. It's not against the law to take a break and step out of your comfort zone, step out of familiarity, step out of what you've been doing every single day and do something different. Because when you do, you might generate new creative thoughts and ideas and create new fresh content that your followers, your audience, your subscribers, they'll love. Okay, so take a break, step out of your comfort zone and do something different. So these are the 3 things that I'm sharing with you today to help you to continue to produce content and not burn out. So just to recap, number 1 is to be organized and make sure that you set boundaries. Number 2 is to optimize your efforts for efficiency and ensure that you're using technology so that it can benefit you. And number 3 is to take breaks. Those are the 3 key things that I do in my life, and I'm encouraging you to do them in your life too, so that you can continue to produce content and not burn out. Because the worst thing that you want to do is burn out and then start hating to produce content. Okay, so this is my episode for today of I Made a Podcast. I hope that you learned something from it, and I hope that you were encouraged by what we were able to talk about today. Now, make sure that you subscribe to I Made a Podcast. Now, I have lots of episodes that I've already recorded for season number 2, and I had some wonderful conversations with some podcasters in such specific niches, and they do such specific things with their podcasts and getting the word out that you're going to want to listen, you're going to want to subscribe and check out everything that we talk about so that you can learn more about podcasting, so that you can become better by learning what some of these other amazing podcasters are doing. So next week, I'm going to release an interview that I did with Matt Drinkon, and he has a podcast called the Eternal Optimist Podcast. So you're going to want to subscribe so you can get that episode next week on I Made a Podcast. And again, I hope that you learned something from this episode. Go back and listen to it again and take notes and really implement some of the things that I talked here. See how you can make some small changes in what you do to be more efficient and more effective in creating content or in your general day-to-day lives, because you don't want to burn out and you don't want to have a breakdown, but you want to enjoy life, you want to make impact, and you want to reach people with your content and still be there for your family. Okay, so listen to the things that I mentioned in this episode. Remember to subscribe to I Made a Podcast. I hope that you learned something from this episode, and remember to go out there and make something happen today. The best time to create a podcast was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. So go ahead and make it happen. And I'll see you next week on I Made a Podcast. Peace.